Hello, folks, and welcome to the Alvin Rosenzweig Show. I'm delighted to be here and to share this with you. We have a fascinating interview today, um, and I'll tell you about it in a sec. I'm going to introduce my guest formally, but as I do at the top of the show, I like to point out to people that the reason I do the show is in order to pay honor, homage to humankind, to remind us that so much of what we've accomplished together over the years is beautiful, and to inspire people to find ways and means of making their life better through these interviews. In a moment, I'll be speaking with Rick Karp, who effectively is the leader of the Jewish community of the Yukon. Welcome, Rick. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
And you're going to discover that Rick is a very diligent, tenacious human being. I just asked him if he is a type A. He said, I think I am. And I think you'll figure that out, that he is indeed. He's somebody who works really, really hard. And I think that one of the things that you can take away from this interview, you'll see yourself, is the importance of sweat, right? Of applying yourself and ensuring that the goals that you set for yourself, you follow through with and you make them happen. Starting or running a Jewish community in the Yukon requires diligence, and Rick has that. So, once again, Rick, I welcome you to the show and I thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Let me introduce you formally then. Welcome to today's episode where we dive into the remarkable story of the Jewish community of the Yukon Territory and Rick Karp, a community member and leader. In the Yukon Territory, one of the most beautiful and magical places in the world, where it is said that there are more bears than people, where you can find the best places to view the aurora borealis due to its northern latitude, a very small but vibrant Jewish community of just about 46 or so. People thrive under the leadership of Rick, a dedicated advocate for Jewish heritage and culture, an author, a former teacher, a businessman, a father and a grandfather, and a wonderful husband to Joy. God bless her soul. From uncovering a hidden Jewish cemetery in Dawson City to spearheading efforts for Whitehorse's first ever Jewish Heritage Month, Rick has been a driving force in preserving and celebrating the rich history of Yukon's Jewish community. Join us as we explore his journey and the challenge and brilliance of sustaining Jewish life amidst wildfires and isolation in a pristine environmental ecosystem with grizzly bears, moose, caribou, wolves, where they all thrive. And you'll find rugged mountains there, glaciers and rivers, and the enduring legacy of the Klondike Gold Rush as it continues to shape this unique northern community. Stay tuned for a very inspiring conversation about resilience, history, and the power of community in the far north. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Karp. Yay.
Thank you so much.
How are you, my friend?
I'm busy and feeling good.
You
It's
are
it's
feeling well?
beautiful weather today.
Oh, what is the weather up there?
Today, well, it's sunny right now, not a cloud in the sky. It's cold at night, only about 6, 7 degrees at night, and but today it's going up to about 23.
Let me ask you something. You have short summers and longer winters, and the temperature goes down to minus 50. What is that like to be in such cold weather?
It's really quite amazing. We haven't been down to minus 50 in a while, but minus 28, 30 would be a norm at the cold time in winter, late December, January. And it's quite something to after a snowfall to walk outside and the sun comes up in the winter, the sun comes up at 11 in the morning
Mhm,
and it sets at about 3:34 in the afternoon
mhm.
in Whitehorse. But to walk out when the sun comes up and you look at this fresh snow and it's all like diamonds shining.
Yes.
It's really awe-inspiring. It's really quite amazing to be here. It really is.
What's interesting is that you're from Ottawa originally,
Correct.
and you made your way up into the Yukon, and there is a saying which I discovered through my research. A lot of people say is I wanted to go for a couple of years. I had a job up there. And then once I'm there, I couldn't leave.
You
Was
can.
that what happened to you?
Basically, that's of course the joy. There's a significant part of all of that story, and that's joy. Um, but it's true. Yes, yes, absolutely. You see, Yukon is more than half the size of all of Ontario.
Yes.
And in all of Yukon, there's about 48,000 people
Yeah.
in the whole of Yukon. And in Whitehorse, there's 38,000. And so it's just it's unbelievable nature. And as you mentioned, the, the Department of Tourism said there are more bears in Yukon than people. I mean,
Yes.
it's unbelievable the wildlife that you see, experience. And I'm looking out a picture window and it's the forest just outside. It's unbelievable. And so,
Are you okay not seeing an awful lot of people?
well, in Whitehorse, we see a lot, we know each other.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
walk down the street and people say, "Oh, hi." And sometimes I don't know who they are, but you respond. And it's in that respect, it's a friendly, very friendly atmosphere. The it's very interesting that the percentage per capita of people who have who have graduate degrees from university, Whitehorse has the highest percentage per capita in Canada.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so we're quite an academic and of course, First Nations. We have 14 different First Nations
Yeah.
in Yukon. 11 have settled their land claims. Throughout all of Canada, there's only about 25, maybe a few more now, that have settled their land claims. 11 of them are right here in Yukon. So it's unbelievable to see the transition and what's happening.
What made it possible for them to settle their land claims?
That's a good question. It started about 30 years ago. And it took about 20 years
Mhm.
for them to settle their land claims. But it was just the desire, the drive, the consistency, never stopping, pushing. And the federal government, I guess, thinking, oh, it's Yukon. It's not Toronto. It's not Vancouver. It's just Yukon. Why
Yeah.
not? And so it happened. And once you got one, the rest fall into place.
A little bit about the Yukon. It borders on Alaska to the west, British Columbia to the south, and the Northwest Territories to the east, with the Arctic Ocean to the north. Its capital, of course, is Whitehorse, as you said, with about 70% of Yukon's population living there. It's definitely known for the Klondike Gold Rush, basically 1896 to 1899, a little bit longer than that, which brought thousands of people to the region, including Jewish people, of which we will speak about shortly. Uh, Kluane National Park and Reserve is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The climate is subarctic climate with long, cold winters and short, warm summers. And of course, the Northern Lights is one of the best places to view the aurora borealis is there because of the northern latitude. Do you still get enamored by the Northern Lights?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of winter tourism, believe it or not, from China. We are the most multicultural city. Again, another wow
Yeah.
in Canada. In the Canada Day Parade in July, we had 62 different flags
Well,
marching. And we've got, the Chinese, there are more Filipinos right now in Whitehorse than First Nations. I mean, it's amazing the Japanese, the Chinese, and in the wintertime, to come back to your issue, your point, in the wintertime, there are Chinese tourism companies, and a lot of Chinese people come here to see the Northern Lights.
well,
And it's an amazing sight.
I'm trying to understand what it must be like to be there because I haven't been there. Um, and I live in Toronto, which is a bustling, busy city. You know, Rick, you probably know this. In order to get from my house at Shepherd and Bathurst to the other side of the city, let's say I'm going west to the outskirts of Mississauga, it can take an hour and a half,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
suffer from that, do you?
No, a traffic jam maybe, oh, it takes 15 minutes to
Yeah,
get down. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
no, we don't have that issue.
So in order to live where you live, you have to be a lover of the wilderness, of the rivers, of the lakes, right? You can't live in that area without embracing nature in its fullest, right?
Appreciating. You know, there are those who are constantly going fishing and hunting and just exploring, but you have to you look out and you have to appreciate nature
Yes.
because it is so unbelievable. And when you from here to Dawson City, it's about 500, oh, more than 500 kilometers. So it's a very lengthy drive. And in the wintertime, if you're going to Dawson City, you have to check in with the RCMP
Oh,
to say, okay, tomorrow I'm leaving, I'm going to Dawson. And they say, all right, when you arrive, let us know. Because if you don't let them know, something might have happened on the way. And so they'll start searching immediately.
wow, isn't that fascinating?
It is.
You heard of stories where people got stranded or what?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are many stories and you know they get found. I mean it's really something, you know, it's an amazing place to live.
What kind
And
of
as
animals will you see wandering around your house or around your area?
well, you know, we see fox and you I don't know if you'll see a bear in Whitehorse, although we've had some mentions, oh, there was a bear the other day, and
Yeah,
you know, we watched it, and it sort of came and nibbled a bit, and then took off. And
yes.
you know, there's caribou and moose and all sorts of other animals. If you, as soon as you, I mean, Whitehorse is what 38,000 people, so
Yeah,
it's not large.
right.
And to get outside of Whitehorse, like I live halfway up the mountain, and you know, it's really quite amazing.
Do you go hiking? Do you go out for walks?
Sort of. I go to check the mail.
How far is your mailbox?
A few feet.
You know,
A lot of people do, but I don't know. I've just since I lost Joy, the books, you know, as you mentioned, I've written five, but four, and three of them have been published. And then the Jewish Cultural Society takes a lot of time. I was president of the Whitehorse Chamber of Commerce for
yes.
14 years. I'm still a volunteer there. And now elections Yukon, so I'm an active uh, returning officer for the elections Yukon, and we're expecting an election to be called in the next few weeks. So I'm very active with that, and then just a whole bunch of other things. Yeah.
We should mention once again that when you say joy, I know you have joy in your heart, you're a happy man, but you
Mm.
are talking about your wife who passed away a few years ago. And she has an amazing story. In fact,
Oh,
you wrote a book about her.
that's right. And I have it. This. I'm not sure if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
This is Joy. And yes, she was. I don't know. You know, the book is lengthy. I just published it a few months ago, but she has influenced in her life millions of people around the world. In 1976 to 1978, we were in King. I was doing graduate school at Queen's University. She was she was working for a McDonald's owner operator, helping him grow to 5 stores, set up the head office. And he came to her one day, and this was so typical in those days. Joy, he said, Joy, we've got the 5 stores, but Brockville, Kingston, and Napanee, there's what 92,000 people, and we've got over a 320% turnover rate.
Mm.
There aren't enough people to staff the store. Can you do something? And I still use what she did then today. She interviewed, she went to each of the five stores, interviewed about 400 or 500 people and talked to them
Mhm.
and asked them, why are you leaving? Why? And the stories are in the book. There are stories. And so she created what became the worldwide training program for McDonald's.
Yeah.
And it she implemented that in Kingston, Ontario in 1978, and by 1980, 81, 82, it had hit the system wide. And embedded in that program is also something called promote from within. In other words, focus on your staff. If you see someone who's excited about working, who's interested, who's committed, focus on that person. Ask them if they want a career, promote them. And it's just, she was unbelievable. And
You
that was
know,
just the start.
people have commented on your book. A woman by the name of Barbara said, "Oh, yes, it's a very worthwhile read. It definitely speaks to those of us who are blessed to have known Joy, and it will introduce Joy's courage, life, and soul to those out there who were not fortunate enough to have met her."
Yes.
What made you fall in love?
And it was, oh God, we're going a little bit back in time, but in April of 1966, I get a phone call. I had failed out of grade 13 at that time
Really?
in Ottawa, yes. And I get a phone call and I said hello, and it was Joy on the phone. And I didn't know who she was, and she didn't know who I was. But in those days, if you had a party, and she was having a party that Saturday night, she was in a kosher uh, Orthodox family. But after Shabbos, she was having a party.
After Shabbos,
And
yes.
yeah, and she in those days, if you had to have the same number of girls and boys. She was short one guy.
Uh,
So her friends told her, call Rick Karp, call Rick,
uh,
he's not so bad.
give him a
And so
call.
yeah, so I met her that night, and I say in the book, I don't know, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. And she changed my life. My friends had all graduated from high school and were off at Carleton and other universities. And I said, "Oh my God, I gotta keep up with them."
Yeah.
And so I took part-time courses at Carleton, failed every one of them. And I got a letter. We're going back now, 1965, and I got a letter from Carleton saying, "Sorry, Guy, but you can never take a course here again." And and I didn't tell Joy that because she was going into her first year at Carleton.
Yeah.
But by the end of that, she looked at me and she said, "You weren't ready for university. Go back part-time, get those two English and what was it, English and science course, and graduate from high school." And so I did. And because of her, she then said to me after that year when I had graduated, she said, "All right, I'm going to my second year. Come on, come to Carleton."
Yeah,
Then
come
I
join me.
showed I then I showed her the letter.
You couldn't go back.
This was Joy. Joy, Joy. She went to um, St. Pat's College, which was associated with Queen's in Ottawa, but separate. Not
Yeah.
Queen's, I'm sorry, Carleton, but separate from Carleton. She went in without letting me know. She spoke to the registrar, Father Cormacan, and no one could say no to Joy. And she convinced him. She said, "I'll move to St. Pat's. Let Rick come in. I promise you he'll do well." And he let me in. And at the end of that year, well, which is a bunch of stories in there, um, she didn't tell me again at the end of that year. She went to the registrar at Carleton, and nobody could say no to Joy.
Yeah.
And she sat down with him, and he said, "All right, all right." And so we then went to Carleton together.
And life changed.
Now I've got what, 3 degrees because of her.
What are your degrees?
Well, and I did general arts, and then I did education, and then education, and then business. So.
Yeah, you're definitely type A, that's for sure. You know, things, your life has always been very interesting. There's always been things that are happening when you're with Joy. When Joy was alive, she passed away from cancer. God bless her soul. There was a time where two of her students felt that it would be profitable to kidnap her. Tell us the story about what happened. And it was turned into a movie, this story.
Yes, it was 1992. First of all, because of Joy creating the McDonald's training program, she had heart issues that we didn't really know about.
Hmm.
Her
Hmm.
first heart attack was when in 1970, when she was 21 years old and she gave birth, well, the first known heart attack. She gave birth to the twins. And um, that's a lengthy story. So she had heart issues, but because of that, a few years later, after the kids, we were in Kingston, Ontario. We were part of the Orthodox shul in Kingston, and the kids, because they were twins, a boy and a girl, we had the bar and bat mitzvah on the same weekend, and it was just shortly after that, because of Joy's upbringing, she was part of the kids' training for their bar and bat mitzvahs along with along with the rabbi and the rebbitzin. And so it was after that that she, in 1983-ish, she had problems in her office in the restaurant. So I got a call. Long story short, um, she we brought her to Kingston General Hospital because we knew a gastrointestinal doctor in the shul. And he said, get her in, get her in. So we brought her in. 4 or 5 days later, nothing came back positive. You see, in those days, and this is so important, in those days, testing, medical testing for how people present with heart issues, 92% were done on men.
Hmm.
And women present differently. Joy presented with tummy pains. So she was addicted to something called Eno, an antacid. And after 5 days of testing, nothing came back positive. They're going to release her from the hospital. And she, uh, it was amazing. A fourth year medical student came in and said, Joy, can I ask you? I know you're lead. Can I ask you a few questions? Yes, yes, yes. Then, long story short, at the end, she said, Joy, next week we're also starting a course on heart issues. Can I do an ECG on you? And she was so excited, the student. And Joy said, What's an ICG? Ah, go ahead. Why not?
Yeah.
Got nothing else to do. So she goes out, she does the ICG, the reading comes up. This fourth year med student looks at the reading, has a weird look on her face. And Joy said to her, Are you okay? And his fourth year med student said, Yes, but I have to check because I've been here too long. I have to check with the nursing station. She walks out of Joy's room into the hallway and faints.
Right.
This fourth year med student drops to the ground. So all the nurses run over to her and she's sort of saying, Get a doctor, get a doctor. And so finally a doctor comes over thinking it's her. What's wrong? What's wrong? Do we need to go for an exam? What's wrong? And she gives him the reading and it shows that Joy's in the middle of a massive heart attack. And it's a fourth year med student that how we found out about Joy having 5 blockages ever since she was a child.
Wow.
Anyway, so a couple of years later, McDonald's was looking for new owner operators. And I didn't know, but Joy said, "Oh, why don't we try and get a store? That would be really neat because we should be working together. You're teaching, I'm at McDonald's, we're separated all day, but if we are accepted." So anyway, I said, "Oh, how are we going to get a McDonald's? Come on." And so I said, "Okay." So we applied and had an interview in Toronto. So we went down to the interview, and when we walked into the room, there were 4 or 5 from McDonald's there and doing the interviews. And they all ran over to Joy and gave her a hug and said, "Oh, it's so good to finally meet you. How are you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm standing there saying, "Hey, what about
Yeah.
me?"
Of
You
my
know?
chopped liver, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so we sat down, and of course, they knew Joy. So they were asking me all the questions. Anyway, so when we walked out of the room, the receptionist, I said, "Oh my God, that was Joy. What happened?" And the receptionist sort of said, "Well, don't worry about it because there are about 12, 1,300 applicants, so not to worry about it." So anyway, we came home. About 2, 3 weeks later, I get a call from Joy. She said, "Come to the office after school." And I said, "Okay." So I went over. She was downstairs waiting for me with a big smile on her face. I said, "What?" And so she said, "Come on upstairs, come on upstairs. Rick, her owner operator, wants to chat with you." And I thought to myself, "Oh, he's going to apologize that we didn't get the restaurant and he's going to take us out to dinner. So we walk into the room, and there's the CEO of McDonald's Canada and about two or three others. And they come over to me, shake my hand and hug and say, "Congratulations.
Muzzle tough.
Yeah, yeah, you got the restaurant." And I'm standing there saying, "Oh my God." Oh my God. What I didn't know was they had already said weeks and weeks ago that Joy was going to get the restaurant, but
And
they had to do interviews.
right, and then it turned out that you parlayed into one of the most popular and famous and award-winning McDonald's, which is a really big deal. And yeah, it's just the two of you built something really, really special. Unfortunately, at turn of the century, you had to sell it back because she was ill. But Rick, what I want to hear is that story of when she was kidnapped.
Okay, so we had to do the background.
Yeah, a little bit of context. Yeah.
Yeah, it was September 24th, 1992. And Joy was in and out, her heart issues, because when they discovered all of the problems with her heart, they said, "You're too young. We can't do a bypass." So she was on meds. So she would be in the rest. She had about 2.5 hours of energy. So when she could, 3, 4 days of the week, she'd come into the restaurant. On this particular day, she was home. And I was at the restaurant, and about quarter to 10 in the morning, I get a phone call. And well, it was upstairs. They got the phone call, and this customer service rep, who was a really wonderful person, she buzzes down to me saying, "There's someone on the phone who wants to talk about Joy." And I said, "Well, so take a message and, I'll call him or her back." And she said, "No, you better take this." So I took it, and basically the phone call said, "Look, there's 10 of us. We've got Joy. We want $100,000 this afternoon in cash, $50 bills, unmarked. Otherwise, you'll never see your wife again." And I thought it was a joke. And they said, "No, no, go home. We're going to call you at about 1 this afternoon to tell you where to drop them on 1 or 2 o'clock to get the money and where to drop it off." So I go home and I see her car is missing. I had just bought her a sports car. Anyway, I see her car is missing, and I go in the house and I see at the front door her day planner, which she never was without, on the floor. So I figure, okay, something's wrong. I called the RCMP, and I told them that these people, I think, have kidnapped my wife, and meet me at the house. So they sent a couple of people over, and you know they said they were expecting something, but certainly not a kidnapping. And so in those days, we didn't have like we do today with these mobile phones and everything.
Mhm.
And so they called back about 2 in the morning. And again, it's a long story. It was the valedictorian of the high school
Yes.
and his best buddy.
Mhm.
And his father also was arrested for destroying evidence. And the two of them had set up a little I don't know, mafia. They would the father and the valedictorian had dual citizenships, American Canadian, and they would go down into Seattle because his brother was in Seattle. So the two young ones, they would go in Seattle, buy guns, and come back up, and they were selling guns on the market. And this is when computers were really just coming in, and new computers, and they had stolen from. They were the darlings of the high school. They said to their science teacher, who was the vice principal, "Oh, Mr. Bunkus," it was on a Friday. None of the kids like the experiment we're doing. Can we come in tomorrow? Can we have a key to the school and come in tomorrow? And they were the darlings. He said, "Sure, I've got to come in at noon anyway. Here's the key." And so they went into the school. And they weren't interested in the experiment. They were interested in stealing computers and stuff. Anyway, so they had Joy, and they had taken her in her car. And previously, they had gone up the mountain, and they had a front end loader, and they had dug sort of a little bit of a pit into the side of the mountain where they were going to drive the car. And they took Joy up. They had her handcuffed. They had her cuffed on her ankles in the passenger side of the car. Then they drove in to this area and they brought earth back up to the windows of the car. Then they cut down trees and covered the car over. And they dragged her wrist over the center, because it was a two-seat sports car, over the center console, handcuffed her to the steering wheel, put blindfolds on and a bag over her head,
Mm.
and that's how they left her. And they knew she had a heart condition, and they didn't leave her any medications.
How was she found?
Well, time went by, as I was mentioning, 16, 17 hours. So after a number of hours, they called me, told me where to get the money, where to drop the money. And the RCMP didn't know, because we had never had a kidnapping before in Whitehorse in
Yeah,
Yukon.
yeah.
And so they had to call Ottawa, and Ottawa was instructing us on what to do. And so, long story short, where they told me to first drop it, I had to make the excuse. I couldn't see it. September 24th, and there was a whiteout snowfall that day. And so I said, it was too much snow. I couldn't see where to drive. And they said, okay, okay, go down this highway. If you get to the bridge, you've gone too far, turn around and you'll see like a garbage bag on one of the telephone poles and drop it down there, the bag. So I said, okay, the RCMP, it was McDonald's. People saw me. They knew who I was. So the RCMP had an officer who was going to drive my Jeep to do that. And I said, no, if they're there, they're going to know it's not me. And I've called the RCMP anyway. So they got permission for me to be involved. So we drove out. I couldn't see it because it was so blinding snowfall. We came back, and I think I saw the car, and there was an officer sitting behind me with a machine gun. And he said, "Don't stop the car. Just open your door, throw the bag over the top of the roof,
Mhm.
and then take off." I, but I couldn't. I pulled over, I stopped the car. He was started to yell at me.
Mhm.
I jumped out, I ran around, I dropped the bag, came back into the car, and he said, "What's the big deal?" He said, "If they were there, they probably would have shot you. If I heard any gunfire, I was going to bzzz, and this machine gun would have gone straight through your vehicle for about 50 meters or whatever." And then I got a little nervous. But finally, things happened, and they caught the younger one, and they brought him in, and then he told them who the older one was. So they caught the two guys, and they had concocted a story how their parents had been kidnapped, and we had to do this to get the money, blah, 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 which wasn't true, of course. And one of the RCMP officers, special forces, he just picked up the younger one and put him into the wall. And finally, the younger one agreed to show or try to show where Joy was.
How was she when you came to her?
Well, of course, couldn't go. It was the RCMP. So they went up the mountain and it was a big snowfall. So he had a little bit of trouble finding the driveway that they had plowed. And so finally they saw, but the pictures, you couldn't see the car. All you could see, and it was sort of, you could see a bit of yellow on the roof through the snow, through the trees. And so the one of the officers said, "Okay, wait." They thought there might have been someone in the car with her, with a gun. So the officer sort of bounced his way through the snow, slid over the roof of the car with his gun ready to shoot the guy, and came back and finally found Joy. But she was semi-conscious. There was, blood from her ankles on the floor. She had managed to free herself from the steering wheel because that wasn't a real handcuffs. And she tried to loosen the ones on her ankles and stuff, but that didn't work.
How was she afterwards?
Well, she wasn't well at all, of course. They rushed her to the hospital. And so they sort of checked her out, bandaged her foot up as best they could. And yeah, the psychiatrist, the RCMP brought up a PTSD. We didn't know what it was then. They were talking about the trauma. So they brought up a psychiatrist from down south. We had contacted McDonald's, and we were saying to them, "Look, we've got to get out of Whitehorse. It's just, is there another restaurant? We'll move." But the psychiatrists and psychologists in Whitehorse said, "No, look, this is going to follow her because of the trauma. It's going to follow her wherever she goes. You're best for her to confront it in the house that she was taken from." And so we stayed in the house, but that was one hell of an ordeal, I'll tell you.
I can imagine. What happened to the boys?
The older one was 18 years, 4 months. They both pled guilty, of course, and he was sentenced to 8.5 years. They sent him down to a medium security prison in southern BC, just outside of Vancouver, I think it was. When he arrived, the guards and everything looked at him and said, "Oh my God, this is just a kid.
Yeah.
We can't put him with the general population." So they gave him his own cell. They gave him, what, a couple of $1,000s. He got a computer. He enrolled at UBC because if you take courses, you don't have to make license plates and stuff,
Mhm.
and you still get your couple of bucks every day, I guess. So he enrolled at UBC. He tried a couple of times to get out early. He served 4.5 years. At the end of the 4.5 years, he only had two courses left to graduate from university, from UBC. And so he graduated. Then he went down to the States because he had a Canadian American citizenship. And he apparently, what I heard, he joined the Marines and became a weapons expert, teaching Marines how to use guns and stuff. The younger one, he was 17 years, 7 or 8 months. So he was in the young offenders facility because he wasn't an adult. And I fought for a year and a half to raise him to adult court. And at the young offenders facility, he enrolled at Yukon College at the time. Now it's Yukon University. Yukon College at the time, and he took courses there. And then after about a year, little close to a year and a half, um, Dr. Yuri Yanai from Hebrew University was coming to Whitehorse. And he called me and he said, "Would you like me to bring you something from the Holy Land?" And I said, "Oh my God, oh, Dr. Yanai, please, please go to the Wailing Wall, go to the Western Wall, even dirt from the ground
Oh,
and put
wow.
it in a jar. That would be wonderful." And he paused. He said, "Well, first of all, there's stones and it's paved, so I can't do that. And if I go up to the wall itself and I try to chip out some stone, they're going to shoot me.
Yeah.
So no."
Not a good
So,
idea.
yeah, but he said something very special is happening a week and a half before I come to Yukon, and I'll bring you something special. And he brought me a piece of the David and Goliath story.
Mm.
Another professor, an archaeologist, they had discovered the entrance to King David's palace. And she had agreed they're going to, for the first time in over 3,000 years, they're going to open the entrance to daylight.
Yes, familiar.
And the boulder where they would have been leaning as they were waiting for the doors to open thousands of years ago, she chipped off some stone, and the mortar that would have been made 3,000 years ago by the Hebrews by hand, and she put it in a jar. And he brought that to me.
Special gift.
But I didn't know why he was coming to Yukon. And we had a nice time, and then finally, um, he said to me when he was leaving, I said, well, why did you come? He said, well, I did a presentation to judges, to lawyers, and to a few other people on something called restorative justice.
Yeah.
I said, oh, restorative justice. And then I thought, oh my God. And it was about 2 weeks later when the Judge Lillies, was going to announce the sentencing for the younger one. And so the courtroom is full, and I'm sitting, sort of in the front of the audience. And the judge gets up and he looks around and he said, I'm not raising Matthew to adult as an adult, but I'm going to give him the maximum sentence as a young offender, and that's 3.5 years. Um, but I'm going to give him double time served, which is 3 years. So he's got 6 months left on his sentence, and he's been doing very well at Yukon College. So I'm going to give him that 6 months in open custody so he could be at home and finish his studies at Yukon College. And I'm sitting there, here's this person who came to the house in disguise with weapons and kidnapped my wife and in her car. And, you know, as subsequent to the kidnapping, ultimately, she had to have a quadruple bypass operation, and her left foot, which is every few years of her life, she had life-threatening issues. And as I mentioned, her first heart attack was when she gave birth to the kids. And then a few years later, a car accident, she smashed up her left foot. The handcuffs on her ankles re-damaged her left foot. They wanted to amputate it. And I said, no, no, no,
So the justice system was very good to the
younger.
culprits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to I want to move ahead.
I'm
And I want
sorry about that.
Oh, listen, it's a story you're passionate about, and I don't blame you. I mentioned before too, it was such a compelling story that the CBC, I believe it was, made a movie about it, right?
No, CBS.
CBS, sorry.
What
Yes.
happened was, this was 1995 now, and they were shooting from LA, from Los Angeles. They were shooting a movie in Whitehorse, part of a movie in Whitehorse, and it was Pesach time, Passover time, and the director of the movie was Jewish.
Yeah.
And so here I'm in my office. I get a phone call from the director of this Hollywood movie saying, Mr. Karp, oh, I understand that there's a Jewish community. Is anything happening for Pesach, for Passover? And I said, well, we're having a Seder this evening. And then she formally introduced herself as to who she was, and I'm thinking, oh my God, a director of a movie from Los Angeles? Of course you can come. So
You're invited.
she came and she brought a cameraman who was also Jewish. At the end of the Seder, there were about 15 of us around the table, and she sort of looked around, and Joyce sitting beside me, and she said, Whitehorse is gorgeous. What a gorgeous community. And she paused. She said, but does anything ever happen here?
Yeah.
Joy poked
Guess
me.
what?
Yeah, Joy poked me, and she got a little upset. So she said, excuse me. So she left. And then the rest of us were making faces. Oh my God, oh my God. So she said, did I say something wrong? And so I mentioned that Joy was kidnapped. The next day, she came to see me in my office, and she said, "Is there any?" And I explained to her, all the psychiatrists and psychologists were looking after Joy. And at one point I said, "What about me? I'm upset too, you know." And he said, "You're an old English teacher. Just sit down
You're doing
and
just
write
fine.
out,
Yeah.
yeah, write out what happened." And that turned into a manuscript. It was about 140 pages. So I said to her, I wrote out the story, if you want to read about what happened. And she said, "Oh, please send it to me." And she gave me her email and stuff. So I sent it to her. Then it was a couple of months later, I get a call from her saying, I want to buy the movie rights. CBS TV wants to make a movie of Joy's Kid based on what you wrote. And I thought, well, oh my God, of course, of course. And so they did. They made a
Yeah,
movie.
I saw the movie too.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Well, you and I talked a couple of years ago, and you told me your whole story at that
yeah.
time, and I was so intrigued by it. I thought I have to watch this movie, so I did. And boy, oh boy, it was perilous. It was very difficult to watch because of what you and your wife went through.
Yeah.
But thank God she was okay and she
They
survived it.
survived.
She was a
That was
strong woman,
joy. That
strong
was
woman.
joy. Her whole,
Rick, I want to head into the Jewish part of your life
oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
because it's very interesting what you have done. You're the type of person who looks around, you see things, and you decide that you're going to create around those things. And one example of that is that you came across a Jewish cemetery, correct?
Yes. You want the quick story?
Quick story, yes.
Okay. So I'm in my office one day and I get a buzz from upstairs. Say there's a doctor here from St. Paul, Minnesota. He's Jewish. He wants to say hi. So oh my God, I'll bring him down.
Yeah.
So that was Dr. Norm Kagan. So he came into my office and I said, "Wow, how come you're here? What kind of day?" Anyway, we had a chat. And then finally he said, "Well, um, in St. Paul, there's in our membership, there are a couple of people that came to see me saying that their grandfather, and one was a great grandfather, was in the gold rush, and that they had in 1902 they created a cemetery in Dawson. I didn't know about this.
Yes.
It was mid 1990s, and um, I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No." And I've just come back from Dawson because I was trying to find and I couldn't find the cemetery. So I have to go back to St. Paul. We're going to do more research. Then a couple of us will come back. We'll find it. We're going to restore it and claim it for our congregation. And I said, "Okay." I gave him my card. I said, "Look, if there's any assistance we can be of, just give me a call." So he left. And then the next day I'm thinking, wait a minute. There's no one from the States in St. Paul who's going to find a Jewish cemetery in our backyard
Yes.
and claim it for them. No way. So I called a few people together and we did a bit of research and made some phone calls and went up to Dawson. And Dr. Cohen, Herb Cohen was a psychiatrist up here, and then Arthur Mitchell and myself. So we were up there and we were looking, we couldn't find anything either. And then, so we're going in different directions. And all of a sudden, Dr. Cohen, Herb, he fell down. And we said, "Oh my God, a psychiatrist in the middle of the forest." So we ran over to him and we helped him up. And I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he smiled and he pointed down. And we looked down, and there it was, Beit Chaim, the
It's
entrance
amazing.
to the entrance to the cemetery.
That's amazing.
And so we discovered the cemetery, but in 1902 to about 1917, and here it was about 70, 80 years later, and the trees and the bush and
Yes.
everything had
Yeah.
overgrown. So we sort of looked around a little bit. We saw some picket fence, and so we got an idea. We left, then we came back a little while later and started to chop down the trees, and we found there's one gravestone in there. And we found the cemetery. Then 1998, we had it all cleaned up, and we redid the picket fence to its original status. And we had a new entranceway with Beit Chaim made and put into place. And I had hired a master's historian student studying for his master's degree in history, to do some research to see who's buried there. Well, there were six people buried, only one gravestone, but then six sort of mounds were there as well. And so he did some initial research. And but we had found, and then it was August around this time in 1998 that we had a rededication ceremony, and it was the first time in history in Whitehorse that we had a full Torah and had Shabbat services Friday night and Saturday. And there's pictures in the book of that, and it was actually Joy's father who did the Haftorah that Shabbos. So it was really, really something. It was really
And it
exciting.
was sort of laying the groundwork for the Jewish community that would be today.
Right.
We mentioned at the top of the show that there are somewhere in the area of 46 Jewish
Yeah.
community members, and you also have five non-Jews who have like what paid for membership and are invited
Yeah.
out to things, which is very cool, by the way. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yes.
today when we talk about the Jewish community of the Yukon, tell us about some of the things that your community would do.
Well, we get together for Pesach. We have Passover services. I'm just organizing Rosh Hashanah
Yeah.
because that's September 22nd to 24th this year. And we get together for Hanukkah as well. And I send out, so of the 46, there's 34 who want to get the weekly parshas.
Mhm.
So I made a connection with the Chabad, with Rabbi Matisoff in Calgary, with the Chabad Lubavitcher, and they showed me how to go on Chabad.org to get the current parsha for the week and the Haftorah. And so I organize that, the translation, of course, and I send that out each Friday, early afternoon. And we get together during the year, and a couple of the families have had bat mitzvahs
Yes,
here.
you had a bat mitzvah there.
Yes, that's right. Actually, we've had two or three, and and one time when the last one, when we had the bat mitzvah, Fia Jampolsky's daughter, the rabbi that came up, because we have the Jewish cemetery in Dawson that's rededicated, but not in Whitehorse.
Hmm.
So she had him go talk to the cemetery services, the administration. He went up to the cemetery and rededicated two sections for Jewish burials.
Oh,
So
lovely.
yeah,
Lovely.
so we can be buried here. As a result of the rededication of the cemetery, there was the assistant deputy minister of the Department of Education, who was a PhD historian, Brent Slobodin, and we were friends. And he was retiring, and he said to me, "There's got to be." He read what the student had done, and he said, "There's got to be more. There's got to be more." So we applied for funding, and we got him funding, and he did all sorts of research on getting to the gold rush, during the gold rush, and after the gold rush.
Yes. Yes.
Unbelievable stories. And so we created a three-panel historical display with a sort of a booklet, a magazine, and it traveled the country. And amazing results in Calgary. Was it Calgary or Edmonton? I think it was Calgary. I got a call from the Barron family, and I said, "How come our grandfather Joseph Barron isn't on the panels?" And my initial response, well, if it was Baranowski, because we used the 1902 census, if it was Baranowski, I might have thought, oh, he's Jewish.
Yes.
Let's see. And we all had a laugh. But Joseph Barron and his wife came up here, amazed because they were in Winnipeg, and they came up here and he dog sledded. He did up here. It's an unbelievable story. And anyway, he was in Dawson from 1897 to about 1915. And there was a big newspaper article when he was leaving. The kids, the two boys, at different ages, of course, were the first to be matriculated in Western Canada.
Mm.
And they went with their mother. They had relatives in Chicago. They went down to Chicago. They got their law degrees. They had another relative in the tourism industry in Calgary. And he said to them, he said basically, get your ass to Calgary. We need lawyers here. We need lawyers here. This is, 1915-ish, somewhere in that area. So they went up and they formed the Barron Law Firm, which is still in existence. Then in the late 1940s, the oil industry was wanting to develop in Alberta, but they had no office space. So the two sons, the Barron sons, they built the first high-rise building in Western Canada.
Mm.
They contacted Shell and all these guys and said, "We've got office space. Come on to Alberta." And so basically they're responsible for the oil industry coming to Alberta,
No, it's not fascinating.
which isn't so nice to say today. But
No, it's not. But what interests me really is that the Klondike Gold Rush had an enormous effect
oh,
on the Yukon, and it still does today. There's some very interesting statistics about the gold rush itself. Over 100,000 prospectors known as stampeders flocked to the Klondike.
yeah,
Really, only 30,000 or 40,000 of them actually got to the gold fields. Now, there was an estimated $1.1 billion in 2023 funds that was extracted, but most prospectors found little or no gold. The interesting thing about this whole story and its effect on the Yukon is you had a lot of Jewish people coming up there,
yeah.
and they were colorful folk.
Oh,
Not even before they came there and were during the gold rush were in the Yukon, but afterwards many of them went back to the United States and Canada and were involved in professional sports, and launching theaters and so on. Really, really fascinating people, and I think that adds to the color of your story and of to the Yukon itself.
oh
Amazing
gosh.
people, right?
Well, that's Brent Slobodin discovered all of that through his research.
Through his research, yes.
During the gold rush, there were 200 Jews in Dawson. And one of them who owned, because they weren't really into the gold, they were into, retail and stuff like that. And one of them had Shabbos service. They didn't have Torah or anything, but
Yeah.
they did Shabbat services because two or three of them knew the service by heart, and they would do Shabbat services. And there are two stories. Have you ever heard of Diamond Tooth Lil?
Yes, through my research, I have. Yes.
Oh, okay. So the original Diamond Tooth Lil was Honora Ornstein from
Right.
from Butte, Montana, or wherever Butte is. Her parents were very wealthy. She lived to be 95 years old.
Kanena Ora.
Yeah, but she, in the last 20, 30 years of her life, she would take a diamond out of her tooth, sell it to get money
Really
because she had quite a few diamonds in her
crazy stories.
teeth. Yeah. And she was 17 when she came up to Yukon, 17 years old. And she was part of the uh, entertainment,
Shall
I
we
guess.
say? Yeah.
But then the other story, and then we can move on if you want. Sid Grauman and his father came up here 1897, and the father had to go back to San Francisco. Sid stayed here and had quite an experience here selling newspapers and stuff. And then finally, he went back to be with his father and his family in San Francisco with some money. And then there was the San Francisco earthquake.
Mm.
And Sid said to his father, "Let's go to Los Angeles because the Chinese are building the cross-country railroad, and there's tens of thousands of them in Los Angeles. And when I was in Dawson, I saw these silent films, and it was amazing stuff." And so we're looking, getting close to 1910. And he said, "We'll build the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and
Yes.
we'll charge them 10 cents to get in, and we'll make a fortune." And they did. and they had three theaters. And I'm not sure if you heard of Fatty Arbuckle.
Yes, of
All
course.
right. Sid made him famous and
Interesting.
several other people. So in the Grauman's Chinese Theater, he would show the silent films. But in advance, let's say Fatty Arbuckle would get up on stage and entertain for a half hour, 45 minutes. Then they would show the film that he was the star in the film. And amazing stuff. But what happened was they were putting the cement sidewalks
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and they were putting the sidewalk in. Sid wanted the cement to come into the theater. So one day, I don't remember who the lady was, movie star. So she was coming in, she slipped, stepped into the soft cement, fell down and put her hands down. Sid ran over to her thinking, oh my God, oh my God. And he helped her get up and he looked down and he saw her handprints and her footprint and he said, oh, sign your name. She signed her name, and then they didn't think too much of it. And then people would come in and say, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at that!"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he had the other stars,
Do the same.
they do
Do
the
the
same
same.
going into the theater.
That's turning lemons into lemonade. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then it was after the Second World War, the late 1940s, when theater and movies in Los Angeles, it was on a downturn. And so he was part of creating the Movie Motion Picture Association, the Academy Awards, and all this kind of stuff. And they said, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "Let's have a meeting at the theater, at my theater." So as they walked in, he showed them his walkway in, and he said, let's do a walk of fame along the sidewalk.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
a great
how
story.
the Hollywood Walk of
Great
Fame
story.
came in.
That's
Isn't
a
that
great story.
amazing?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible when you take a look at the history of people, where
Oh,
they come from, and the impact
oh,
that the place where they lived or even stopped over made on them as an example coming to the Yukon.
yeah.
But Rick, there's a few things I want to cover before we wrap up. There
Okay.
are Israelis up in the Yukon, right?
Correct. Yes.
I
I
think you have
have,
about
well, right
10.
now, I think I've got 10. I average about eight. We did have more, but a couple of them were professors, so they moved down to go to a university down south. So I've got about eight right now. And from Edmonton, there's a family that is here because he's got a business for the summer.
Mhm.
So, and their primary language is Hebrew. And this this summer, for the last 3 months, I've had more Israelis come to visit. It's unbelievable. I, you know, it's really amazing how something like that happens. But there are a lot of people who are coming from Israel. They go into Alaska and then come into Whitehorse and then head back home. And one of them from Jerusalem, he was just here a few weeks ago, um, and he was amazing. He and his wife were really amazing, and I've been on what's it called? WhatsApp. He WhatsApps me
Yeah,
all
it's
the
called What's
time.
Up. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's telling me all he's back in Jerusalem now. And he brought this is the book about the Jewish presence before, during, and after the
Yes.
Klondike Gold Rush.
Yes.
And I gave him copies. He brought it back. So now there's a copy of this book in the diaspora office in Hebrew University
Terrific.
at the Bardlian University has a copy, and I just got a letter about 3 weeks ago from the National Jewish Library thanking me for a copy of the book,
Oh,
and
it's
it's
fantastic.
there. Yeah, isn't that something?
Since October 7th, have you experienced anti-Semitism?
Yes. Um, um, there's a story I tell because it's Whitehorse, so I know mayor and council.
Yeah.
We know each other.
Your mishpucha, yes.
Yeah, and mayor and council meet on a Monday at 5:30 in the afternoon. That's when they have their council meetings. And so this one Thursday, I get a call, Rick, can you please come on Monday to our council meeting? And I said, and they said, I said, why? And they said, because we have five or six or seven pro-Palestinian speakers. And I said, oh, and we want you to present the Jewish concept of what's going on in Gaza. And I said, oh, okay. And so I went there. I always arrive early. And I'm sitting there at about 20 after 5. The chambers are full. About 85, 90 people are there. And so they've redone the agenda. And I'm looking at and there are 28 pro-Palestinian speakers.
28.
28. And I was bumped to number 15. And I got a call from the RCMP before the meeting. This was on the weekend, saying, you get a message out to your people. Do not show up at outside or anything. And because we're expecting some pro-Palestinian marches outside. And I said, oh, because we have a mosque in Whitehorse. I'll get to in a minute. And we don't want any issues. You go, you can be inside, but you're the only one. And I was thinking just six or seven speakers, and I thought, okay. And then, of course, it fills up. And at the end of each speaker, first of all, they were yelling at mayor and council. And I said, why are they putting up with this? And, because there were so many of them. But each speaker at the end, they put up their hand and they said, Free Palestine. And everyone clapped and clapped. They didn't know what that meant from the river to the sea. And oh my God, the third speaker was the leader of the NDP party in Yukon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh my, the nerve, because I would be talking to that person often. Anyway, then I had, you have 5 minutes, and nobody was mentioning Hamas. And one of the speakers before I got up looked at the mayor and council and they said, October 7th, that wasn't Hamas. That was the Israeli military. They killed
Right.
their own people for just to be able to politicize the whole thing. Anyway, and then I get up. So I do talk a bit. I went off my speech and I talked about Hamas and about all that kind of stuff. And people were polite. You could hear a pin drop, and they knew who I was. And so I went and I sat back down. And then a few minutes later, I'm getting all of these emails from mayor and council. Please send us your original speech. Send us any other information you have.
Mm-hmm.
So, I sent them several documents, the truth about Israel and all this other stuff. And the mosque. So after October 7th, a few months after in the spring, I get a call from a chap. His name is Israr Ahmed. He was the imam at the mosque. And I thought to myself, I don't know. But he wanted to meet for coffee and also Stu Clark from the United Church. So the three of us sat down. We're having tea. I don't have coffee, but we're having tea and stuff. And Israr said to me, uh, I'm approaching you, but not on behalf of the mosque. I've left the mosque, and many other Muslims have come with me. And I said, oh, I made a face, and he said, it's because in the mosque there's an radical Islamic group, and they've taken over basically saying, destroy Israel and all that kind of stuff. And so we left. And the reason I want to meet is we want to have a fundraiser for Gaza. And so I phoned B'nai B'rith and I told them what was going on. And they said, oh, okay, well, there's these two women in Israel, one Jewish Israeli, one Palestinian, and they're working together for peace. So they would be a perfect group to send. And B'nai B'rith sent me all the information of where to send the money. So we had the evening where we did presentations, and they were way overcrowded. We raised close to $15,000 that night.
Very good.
And just before, I got a call from the RCMP saying they're going to be outside because they were expecting the Islamic group to do, marches and stuff like that. So, yes, we've had some issues. I've had to make presentations to mayor and council. RCMP I've been in 3 times. There's special forces up here, and I was called in one time. It was after hours, and they said, "Go to the front door, just ring the buzzer, we'll let you in." And so I did, and I ran the buzzer, but nobody came. So I figured, oh, maybe this was just, a scam. So I turned to walk away and I see down there's an alleyway and there's someone waving to me. So I got a little bit closer cautiously because the person wasn't in uniform. And they said, "Are you Rick Karp?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "I'm blah blah. Please come with me. I'm from the RCMP." So I followed him behind, and there's a special building, and he had to twice go through scanning and got in. They took my picture, my contact information, and they gave me a special number to call that if anything happens to any one of my membership, you press this button and we'll be there within a couple of minutes.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah.
Good news.
Yeah.
You know what? It's always fascinating to me, Jews on the front line of small communities.
Ah,
I've done some interviews with Jewish leadership in Fredericton, St. Catharines, Kamloops, and all of them sort of express the same narrative, which is that they work really hard to create a friendship or a bond with the non-Jewish community, right?
mm, hmm.
And when they need to get something done, they roll up their sleeves. There's not tons of committees.
Right.
Passover Seder, as you were saying, the high holidays, you got to get it done.
That's right.
So you step in and you make sure that you volunteer, and you've done so much of that. You really, really are the pillar of the Yukon Jewish community. And I say, kol hakavod to you. Well done. We're
Thank you.
we here are thankful for what you've achieved and for what you do. So I want to tell you that first, there's two things I want to tell my listeners and viewers. Firstly, you can become a member of the Yukon Jewish community, correct? And it's not
Yes.
expensive. It's $25 for single membership. It's a big departure from membership here in Toronto, or family membership of $40. I tried to do it online. Unfortunately, my bank was down at the time, but I want to become a member. And you can do it by e-transferring funds to treasurer at jcsy.org.
Correct.
The other thing I want to tell you is that over the last few months, I've been playing around with AI, and I've asked it to compose poetry about my guests. So I have an ode to the Yukon Jewish community. I'm going to read it to you now.
Okay.
In Yukon's vast and rugged embrace, where wilderness stretches a boundless space, a Jewish community small but bright, 38 souls, it's really 46 souls beneath northern lights. Rick Karp, their guide with a heart sincere, unearths the past, holds history near. In Dawson City, stones whisper low, a hidden cemetery where memories grow. From Klondike's rush when gold fever burned to Whitehorse now, where the world has turned, he carves a path for heritage bold, a Jewish story in frost retold. Through wildfires, threats, and isolation call, this community stands resilient tall. In boreal forest by lakes that gleam, they weave their faith into Yukon's dream. Mountains rise and rivers sing, northern lights and silence brings a glow to hearts that gather here in a land where bears outnumber fear. Whitehorse shines with 34,000 souls, yet beyond it bound the wilderness rolls. Vast distances hum with nature's grace, a sacred quiet, a timeless place. First ever Jewish Heritage Month they claim, led by Rick, they light the flame. In Yukon's heart where beauty reigns, their legacy endures through joy and pain. From gold rush echoes to present day, this vibrant few have found their way. In Yukon's wild, where spirits roam free, the Jewish spark burns eternally. What do you think?
That's wonderful.
Isn't
Can
that
you send
nice?
me a copy?
I will send you a copy. Yes, I
Yes,
will.
please. Absolutely. That's wonderful.
Rick, I was talking to my friend Ellie Rubenstein before the show today, Ellie
Mm.
is the spiritual leader, Congregation Abonim in Toronto. And he says to Rick, ask him if he's ever heard of the Frozen Chosen. You ever heard that?
It sort of rings, but no, I don't know detail.
Apparently,
But
that's what they call you guys.
oh,
The Frozen Chosen.
frozen chosen. All right. Oh God.
In conclusion, Rick, I like to encourage my listeners and my viewers to take something particular out of this interview. I would say that I'm just fascinated by the amount of work that you do, how diligent you are, as I mentioned at the top of the show, and your passion for the Jewish people. And again, I find this in all the small Jewish communities. The Jewish community members are so passionate.
Yes.
And it's just beautiful what you do. It's highly inspiring. So, what are your concluding words to my viewers, to my listeners?
Well, we have found being Jewish to be really special and to be able to contribute to the community, not just one person, the group.
Yes.
It's really, really special to be able to do that. And one thing that I think we're sort of missing a little bit is that there are many really small Jewish communities across the country. And there is the Small Jewish Association, the newsletter that Perry Romberg sends
Yeah,
out.
Perry, yes.
But but that's to Victoria. That's there are many small, really small Jewish communities like in Whitehorse where we're running with maybe 50, 60 people or less, Yellowknife, and there's other countries in northern Alberta and northern BC. And I think we have to try and find out a contact person, make contact with that person, just even if it's just to say hi.
Yes. Yes. I think your point is really well taken. And I've mentioned on other shows, and I spoke to Ellie about this today, in fact, that I believe that would be very valuable is to get synagogues in Toronto, temples, congregations, maybe in Montreal as well, and pair them up with the smaller communities across Canada. So I'm going to try to, if you're interested in that, I'm going to try to do that for you. Pair you up with a synagogue here in Toronto just to say hello or do some programming together, whatever it is. I think it's important.
Michael Levy was up here from Toronto,
Yes.
and he's sent me Haggadahs, 25 Haggadahs,
Does he?
and
That's beautiful.
and we keep talking, and he's got Shabbat Shalom. We do have an association with a shul in Vancouver as well.
Good.
And they've offered us, okay, if you want to come in for this service, you can come in on Zoom or whatever, you know,
That's terrific.
technology. Yeah.
Rick, I want to thank you very much for being a guest on my show. I appreciate it very much. And once again, to wish you Mazel Tov on the development of your community in the Yukon. I also want to once again say that your relationship with your wife Joy, God bless her soul, is so inspiring and so beautiful. And I thank you for sharing some very intimate thoughts with us. And I wish you well. As they say in Hebrew, you should only have smachot, which is celebrations in the future. And I wish the very best to your community. I would love to come up there sometime and lead a service. I would enjoy that. And
Anytime.
thank you. Thank you. And to my listeners and my viewers, appreciate you being here. If you have any questions, please feel free to be in touch at avram.rosenzweig@gmail.com. As they say in Yiddish, sei gesinnt. You speak Yiddish, Rick?
Well, I know some.
You know, you,
Zygote,
you know sei gesinnt, right?
Yeah, 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 of course. My parents always spoke in Yiddish.
When they didn't want you to know what they
If
were
they didn't,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. All right. Until we meet again. Thank you.